Hello everybody, I'm Rich Holder and welcome to the channel. Please, before we get going, make sure to like, share, subscribe, ring the bell, do all that stuff so you get notified when I do all this testing. But I'm at West Tech Performance, which means anything goes. And today it's all about big blocks. And not just any big block. We're talking about a Gen 7 496 cubic inch 8.1 liter, you know, the hybrid between an LS with cathedral port heads and a big block. But you know what a big block needs even more of? It needs more power. That's right, so I'm gonna show you how to get more power from your Gen 7 big block by installing, you guessed it, Gen 6 camshaft. Who's crazy enough to put a Gen 6 cam in a Gen 7 big block? This guy right here. So check it out. Okay, it's been a minute, but I have the 8.1 liter back up on the dyno. It is in stock configuration. We've got long tube headers in it, but stock cam, stock intake manifold, all that stuff. I'm gonna re-verify the baseline, make sure it does exactly what it did last time we ran it. We can prep and get a ZZ502 cam swap done today. Let's run it stock. Okay, I've got the 8.1 back up on the dyno. Got it idling. I basically just threw in a program from the 5.3, modified a little bit, add a little bit more fuel. It's a little bit on the lean side for the idle. We're going to add some more. Looking pretty good. So let's take a look at that and we'll add some fuel. See, added a couple clicks of fuel. Right in that area. Okay, we finished running the stock cam. Now it's time to tear this thing apart and swap cams. Starting with the coil packs and valve covers. And off it comes. This provided access to the stock rocker arms. And off the cam, because we're going to also have to swap valve springs with our cam upgrade. Then I remove the spark plugs to facilitate spinning over the motor. Then I attack the factory damper. Look at that! Womp! And voila. After taking the damper off, grab the gun, zip off the front cover. I even saved the factory gasket. Hey, you gotta save money everywhere you can. So we got the front cover off, and we're taking a look. We're gonna line this thing up. We spun it around. Get our dot to dot lined up. So we take our timing chain off. We'll be at TDC. Easy peasy, I zipped off the 3 bolts holding the cam gear to the camshaft. Then remove the 2 bolts holding the cam retaining plate. Before we could remove the factory camshaft, we need to remove the intake manifold to provide access to the spider assembly and factory hydraulic roller lifters. Here's where I wish GM would have used composite intake manifolds like the LS on the big block. This cast aluminum piece, pretty hefty. Before lifting the intake off, I had to make sure that all the lines and hoses were out of the way. Then off it came. Check out the factory lifter valley tray. This prevents hot oil from splashing on the underside of the intake manifold. It was easy to remove, just held in by 4 retaining tabs. Before we could swap cams, we had to remove the factory spider assembly, followed by the guides and hydraulic roller lifters, and last but not least, the factory oil pump drive. With the factory hydraulic roller lifters and oil pump drive out of the way, I carefully removed the factory Gen 7 cam to make way for the Gen 6 cam. Take care when removing the cam not to damage the cam bearings. Now it's time to install the Gen 6 ZZ502 cam. With the ZZ502 cam in place, I installed the cam retaining plate, followed by the timing chain. With the front cover and damper on, it was time to take a look at the valve springs. The weak factory valve springs were simply not going to get the job done with this ZZ502 cam. So I swapped in a spring package supplied to me by my good buddy Andy Mitchell. He's run these motors a lot and has a spring package that he uses all the time, especially with the ZZ502 cam. Good combination, so let's swap them out. We used air in the cylinder to make sure both valves stayed closed while swapping springs. I started by removing the factory rocker studs. Then, using this OG valve spring compressor and a long enough bolt, I was able to compress the factory springs. Using a magnet, I grabbed the keepers once the spring was compressed. Then unbolted the spring compressor and removed the spring. I had to remove the factory valve guide seals to provide access to the rotator so I could remove that and replace it with a shim pack. Out came the rotator. I installed multiple shims under each spring, totaling 200 thousandths, which put our installed height at 1950. Then reinstalled the factory valve seal. Next came the spring package that had almost twice as much spring pressure as the factory springs we removed. Once again, I grabbed the OG spring compressor, bolted it in place so we could compress the new spring and install the new keepers. You should hear a nice reassuring click when you put the last keeper in. One down and 15 more to go. With the new springs in place, we reinstalled the factory push rods and rocker arms. Okay, check it out. We've got the ZZ502 cam in. Let's fire it up, see how it runs. So one of the things we had to do when we changed the camshaft is we also had to change the firing order. We went from a Gen 7 camshaft on the factory one on the 8.1 to a Gen 6 ZZ502 camshaft. So here's what we did. So we just went over here. You can see 1843652. Put the old school big block Chevy firing order in there. In place of the 8.1, resent the file, adjusted the fuel and timing. Actually, we didn't change the timing at all. We just adjusted the fuel because this thing wanted to make more power, so we had to add more fuel. Good stuff, man.
Yeah, big block power.
Okay, guys, here's what you've been waiting for: the dyno results of the 8.1 liter Gen 7 big block Chevy and our cam swap. So we ran our motor with the Holley HP management system. We put 80-pound injectors in it. We ran long tube, 2-inch long tube big block headers, and we ran this thing first with a stock cam, factory intake manifold, throttle body, all of that, and run with a stock cam with an optimized tune, 422 horsepower at 4,500 RPM. This thing is all about torque, and it made a lot of torque. It made more than 100 foot-pounds more than it made horsepower. So it's pretty good. 546.7 foot-pounds of torque and over 500 foot-pounds all the way out to 4,400 RPM. I know everybody wanted me to run this thing down at 2,000 RPM, and believe me, it makes really good torque even down there. So this thing ran very, very well, but let's find out what happened when we installed our camshaft, our ZZ502 cam. And that is a Gen 6 cam. All we had to do is change the firing order, as I indicated in the video. So here's what happened when we installed the ZZ502 cam. Peak power jumped up quite a bit, all the way up to 464 horsepower. Now, we naturally expect usually horsepower gains, especially at the top of the rev range. When we do a cam upgrade from any kind of stock cam, typically they're fairly mild from the factory. But the nice thing is this thing also jumped up quite a bit in torque. 482.5 foot-pounds of torque. And the nice thing about this swap, and this is how you know that you've chosen a good camshaft, is not only do we get more peak power, which is good, we got more peak torque, which is also good, but we also improve the power output basically through the whole tested RPM range. That's when you know. I mean, it's not terribly hard to do when you have a stock camshaft and you put an aftermarket camshaft in. It's pretty easy to get really, really good gains and big power gains. But when you gain power everywhere, that's a good sign. Part 2 coming up on our 8.1 liter. We did the cam in part 1. Part 2 is going to be a modified intake manifold test, so stick around for that. That will be coming up very shortly. I'm Richard Holder. Make sure to like, share, subscribe, ring the bell. As always, do all that stuff so you get notified when I do all this testing, and I will see you in part 2.